Nope, this is Mr. Hira.
I think I've got one here. It's hard with the online meetings. I'm looking through the people list, and we have a lot of people tonight. Sure, I see everybody. I think I do. I think I see everybody. It's here. Fuentes, Mr. Stevens. Yeah, I think we're good. I'll just say Mr. Rankin, but he's not here. We're not used to that. All right. Okay, it's after 7:30 on my watch, so I think we'll call officially to order the Wednesday, October 6th meeting of the City of Falls Church Planning Commission. I will read the remote meeting information, but can we first just call the roll to record who's here? Please, Mark.
Yep. Mr. Krasner,
I'm here.
Mr. Stevens,
Here.
Ms. Peets, Ms. Peets. I thought I saw her. I'll come back. Mr. Puentes,
Here.
Ms. Weiss,
Here.
Ms. Colmont,
Here.
and then Mr. Hira is going to be a little late. And I'm just going to scroll down to see if I see Ms. Peets.
Yeah, I saw him. I saw Melissa.
Okay. Yeah, I see her too. I'm going to mark her as present. Okay, cool.
She's here. Maybe she was muted. Maybe she needs to log back in, but she was here. Okay. All right. With that, I will read the required virtual meeting language here. The meeting for which this agenda has been posted is going to be held in compliance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, Section 2.2-3708.2, state and local legislation adopted to allow for continued government operation during the COVID-19 declared emergency. All participating members of the Planning Commission will be present at this meeting through electronic means, and all members of the public are welcome to view the meeting online at our website, which is www.fallschurchva.gov/PC, and on Falls Church City Television, which you can view on Cox Channel 11, RCN Channel 2, and Verizon Fios Channel 35. Public comments are accepted virtually. Anyone who signed up to speak will do so via the meeting video platform. In order to do that or provide general public comment, you would have needed to complete a speaker form on our website at www.fallschurchva.gov/public comment. And you would have had to do that before noon today, the day of the meeting. Following that, you would have received email instructions to join the virtual Planning Commission meeting. Any written public comments that we received would have been sent to us in advance of the meeting, and those are sent by email to plan@fallschurchva.gov. Those are accepted also up until noon of the day of the meeting. If they're received, they are sent to us and summarized here at the meeting. I think that covers it. And hopefully, we won't have to read this for too much longer. I know the city council was back in person, and according to Mr. Stoddard, there's plans for the rest of us once they work the bugs out, with the hybrid format. But assuming, the situation allows, it's hoped that we could meet back at City Hall sometime in the near future. But I do appreciate everybody bearing with us through all the months we've had of these electronic meetings. Okay, well, we are now going to move on to the adoption of the agenda. Let's see. I think I spoke to Mr. Stoddard. The agenda, I believe, is adequate as it's been printed as far as the order. We have obviously the work session as well as a speaker series, which is a student group here to talk about a plan that they're working on. And so unless there are any comments or suggestions from members of the commission, I would look for a motion to adopt the agenda as it was published.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that? If not, then a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Krasner,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Peets, Mr. Puentes,
Yes.
Ms. Weiss,
Yes.
Ms. Colmont,
Yes.
and Mr. Hyra is coming late. So,
Okay, well, that carries. So we will go ahead as printed. And so the first item up then, number 4, is, as I said, our speaker series. And I'm not sure who we have here. Mr. Stoddard briefed me on this. Who do we have from the George Mason University to talk about the 4-mile run in Jefferson Street corridor renovation plan?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jim Snyder, Director of the Department. If I may do a quick introduction.
Sure, absolutely. Go right ahead, Mr. Snyder.
Pleasure to see all you commissioners in this format. As you know, the city has used student work to help inform us and give us good ideas about everything from small area plans to art to other kinds of planning issues. And we've continued that tradition by working with George Mason University, who has a Master's of Real Estate Development program. And they have looked at several sites that we have given them as sites that they can take a look at and take their skills and determine what they believe the marketplace and demand would best fit the site. They use all their skills that they learn in this master's program to do that work, and it's a class capstone kind of studio. Professor Michael Coran is with us tonight to make the presentation on the 4-mile run area, which, as you may know, was first talked about in a student study by Virginia Tech, then in our small area plan for North Washington Street, and more recently other plans have been done looking at the future of that area, which is an important gateway to the city, has a stream, has a floodplain, and has industrial zoning, and is right at the doorstep with Arlington County on North Washington Street. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce Professor Michael Coran. Also, Robert Wolf, who's been a big friend of the city and a real expert in real estate, helped us with TAPS, ULI TAPS, has also been an advisor on these efforts. So I just wanted to thank the students for taking this on. I know they worked hard. Many of us gave professional advice to them on various topics to help inform their program. So with that, I just wanted to introduce Mr. Coran. Thank you all for putting this on your speaker series.
Thank you, Jim, and hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Just a brief overview. The capstone course was formed in 2013 as part of the Masters in Real Estate Development program at George Mason, and Bob Wolf was director of the program at that time. And we had known each other for a long time in the real estate world. And he asked me to teach this course. So I've been teaching it since then. And the 4-mile run site is probably, Jim, I don't know if I got this correct, but it's either the 5th or the 6th project that the city has allowed the classes to work on. So you guys have been a wonderful source of projects for the various students and classes to work on over the years. So I very much appreciate that. So the 4-mile run site, who is Emily, are you controlling the slides?
yeah, that's me.
Okay, great. All right. So why don't we just go to the next slide, please? All right. So what the course is set up where the students work as a consulting team on behalf of a client, in this case, Falls Church, the city of Falls Church. And the idea is for them to work as a consulting team to create a comprehensive development feasibility report, as well as an oral presentation that's delivered to the client at the end of the semester.
Then on the
So-
audio, you can do this.
I'm sorry?
Go.
Oh, okay. So anyway, so the students, there's two products. One is a written report that's very comprehensive, and
Michael, I believe you're on mute right now. If you could unmute really quick.
I think we lost the audio. Mr. Karan, do you hear us?
There you go.
yeah, okay.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
You hear me? Okay. Where did you hear anything that I said?
We lost about the last 20 seconds.
Okay. So, again, thank you for letting me present tonight. So the course is set up, it was really created by Bob Wolf when Bob was director of the real estate development program at Mason. And he asked me to teach this course with him the first semester, and I've been teaching it since then. And this is probably the fifth of the sixth project that we've been able to work on with the city, thanks to Jim having a wonderful array of things for us to work on and help with. So you guys have been a great source for us. The students work as a consulting team on behalf of an owner that has a site or a property that it doesn't quite know what to do with. And so they come together, prepare a comprehensive development feasibility report that's delivered at the end of the semester, along with an oral presentation and a PowerPoint. What you're going to see tonight is the PowerPoint presentation portion of the students' work. The way the course is structured is that we have a kickoff meeting with the visit the site, tour the site, and then I arrange meetings with a zoning attorney who will tell us how much we can build, what it can be, based upon current zoning regs. We then meet with a number of either other developers or marketing people, brokers who can help figure out, given the location and the market and the trends, what makes the most sense from an execution standpoint. At that point, we know how large it can be and what it can be, what it should be relative to the market. And then we meet with an architect who will do massing studies for us that will allow the students to then meet with a general contractor who will provide a pre-development construction budget, at which point we then meet with a lender who will tell us how much we can borrow and what it will cost. And at that point, the students have everything they need to put together the entire report. So that's pretty much how the process works. Next slide, please. So we're going to go through a quick investment summary, the equity, cash distribution sources and uses, and the return projections. Next slide, please. I'm not going to, we can go through some of these slides pretty quickly because you guys know where you are and you probably know this site. So I'm going to probably, skip a couple of these slides. So it's not because I don't want to share these with you, but I think, you know some of this already. Next slide, please. So here's the site, as you can see, and it's bordered by 4 Mile Run, Lee Highway, North Washington Street, and the land area that we looked at was a total of 7 acres. You obviously are aware of the great location from a transportation standpoint, adjacent to Arlington, as well as having 66 right there. So it's not that far from a metro site. So just a great location. Next slide, please. The site analysis, if you guys are, I'm sure you're familiar with this neighborhood, the parking is pretty minimal. The streets have a bit of cracking and settling damage, and sidewalks are sort of inconsistent. Next slide, please. The entire site consists of 17 lots, and with a total of 13 structures on it. So it's a very it's a very interesting and site with a lot of different uses on it. one of the challenges to move forward on developing this particular site or any portion of it is that you've got multiple owners. Although LF Jennings is a significant landowner, so it would make some sense if there was a desire on the part of the city to partner with Jennings to bring that firm into discussions about how to go about redeveloping the site. So next slide, please. So the total assessed value of these lots is a total of $9.8 million, almost $9 million, or $10 million. And as I mentioned, the ownerships vary a lot. Next slide, please. You can see that it's in a floodplain, as you well know. The good news here is that there are no code restrictions in terms of something being able to be built on this site, although there would be some federal approval that would be required. But in general, even though it's adjacent to the 4 Mile Run stream, you can build on it. Thank you. Next slide, please. Here's the zoning. You guys are well aware of this, so probably don't need to talk much about that. Next slide. The market demographics. So there's a total population of, as of 2021, of just under 15,000 people with a median age of 38.7 years. 78% of the citizens have a bachelor's degree, and the area median income is $122,000. Next slide, please. Here's how the employment kind of breaks out. You can see, by virtue of having a highly educated population, that 96% of the residents work in white-collar jobs. Unemployment rate is 3.9%, and the major employers are in the areas of the public administrations of significant government employment, as well as professional and the business services sectors. Next slide, please. The growth between now and 2045 is that the city is expected to grow 38%. So that's a pretty healthy trend. So you guys are in a very nice in-between location. And so I think it serves you well for future growth. Obviously, there are tons of issues that go with growth, but that you guys grapple with all the time. But you are going to be a very desirable place to live. Next slide, please. So we did, so the students analyzed the market from a multifamily standpoint, a retail, medical office. So these next few slides will really talk about those property types. You can see that the current rents for new projects are anywhere between $2.80 and $3 a foot. There are 1,300 units in the pipeline. And the total, you can see what the total inventories are compared to Boston and Tyson's, and what the rent differences are, and as well as the vacancy rate. So one sort of the takeaway here is that you're a lower cost place to live, and that is reflected by the relatively low vacancy rate compared to Boston and Tyson's. Next slide, please. Suburban, the medical office. We really spent a lot of time on this topic, and what informed this being a component of the recommendation is the ownership of the site across North Washington Street that's owned by Innova, and what their plans are going to be. We met with the head of the real estate unit of Innova, and provided a lot of great input around what their future plan is. And it's clear that they're going to redevelop that entire site at some point and put up probably an outpatient clinic and maybe a supportive office project with that. The other thing that is very appealing about this particular use is that you don't have any Class A medical office in the city. And so given, again, the location and the ease of access, and with the Nova being across the street, it just makes a ton of sense for that to be a potential portion of a redevelopment project. Next slide, please. Townhomes. Clearly, there was going to be a residential component here because of the location and the demand. After going back and forth around, well, what type, we certainly landed on townhomes, condos, and apartments. So there are 3 different residential pieces of this recommendation. Next slide, please. Again, very strong demand for condos. You only have 280. And so they don't stay on the market long, as you can see. So again, it just seems to be a natural fit for that type of property use. Next slide. Retail, because of the site being on a portion of it being on North Washington Street and the mixed use flavor of what the recommendation is, it's clear that a retail component makes a lot of sense here. Not a lot. We went back and forth on this a great amount in terms of how much should it be. And we quickly came to the notion that it should be, not a great amount. A major component of it is recommended to be a grocery store. Next slide, please. So in terms of what this thing looks like, Class A mixed-use development with the revitalization of the 4 Mile Run green space. This portion also engendered a lot of discussion around, does it make sense to have a park or not? If so, what kind of space should it be? Should it be strictly green space? Should it be an entertainment space? Should it have the opportunity to have concerts and art fairs and even potential? I know you have a very strong farmers market already, but also this could be something that could be another farmers market location. I'll have some things to show you in terms of some slides that'll give you some visuals of what the park might look like to kind of give you a sense of what we were thinking. Next slide, please. So here is the proposed plan. 300 units of multifamily residential, which is the orange on the right portion of the site. 50 20 by 40 foot townhome lots, which you can see up there in the reddish orange. And then also the 2/2 stacks would be the condo units, which would be in the blue. And then the yellow would be a 60,000 square foot medical office space. We went back and forth on the size of the medical office. We started at 100,000, and I think the more we spoke with some of the professionals who helped us, again, it seemed to be, let's err on the conservative side here and not understanding exactly what Innova is going to do across the street. So have something that it would certainly be leasable in a relatively quick amount of time. And then the last portion, of course, is the 4 Mile Run green space. And so you can see kind of how the massing was sort of created to provide enough green space where you could actually do something back there and take advantage of the stream itself. Next slide, please. So here are the financing assumptions, which sort of total development and construction costs of $130 million, with the apartments consisting of 73.5 million, the office 44.5, retail 7.3 million, and ancillary retail or existing retail of just under $500,000. One of the things, and this is one of the good insights that Bob had for us, was in order for this to make financial sense, and in order to be able to do this, having the townhomes and the condos as part of the project allows you as a potential developer to generate a great amount of revenue from the sale of the land for those two uses, that is the townhomes and the condos. And so I think you'll see it maybe a little bit later, but so I think we valued, based upon the input that we got from the consultants that worked with us, we could generate about $19.5 million on the sale of those lots. And to make them development ready, I think we would have to spend about $4 million for that, which you can see on the top left-hand side. So you sell those lots for 19 plus, we'd have to do a little bit over $4 million worth of site work, but then you'd be left with a nice chunk of equity, roughly $15 million to contribute to the ultimate execution of the other components. Next slide, please. Financing terms, the assumptions were that loan to cost would be 65%, loan to value 70%, a construction loan of 36 months with a 12-month extension option based upon current, at the time, the current rates, prime plus 1 with a 4.25 floor, and assuming closing costs be 2%. Interest would be paid out of pocket until everything was sold. Next slide, please. You can see the sources and uses of funds. You can see where the land and the sponsor equity and the bank loan results get you to the 131.7, and what those uses would be for the overall project. Next slide, please. So this pro forma assumes that you're building and you're selling. So there was not an analysis done to hold these for 5 to 10 years. Part of that had to do with this was the most difficult semester in terms of trying to find an architect. And so we really had to scramble a lot to get the information that we needed to get to a point where we could make a recommendation. And so I think part of the problem has been that, notwithstanding COVID, that these firms have been very, very busy. And so we just really didn't have as much time to do as much work as we would like. So I think it would be fair to say that you would sort of take this and you take it to the next step, which would be, well, what does this look like on a hold analysis for some defined period of time? And Bob, if you have anything to add on any of this, please, don't hesitate to opine.
Thanks. I'll wait till the end.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So, and as you can see, these numbers here, they cry out for further analysis. So we got as far as we could go, given the time that we had and the problems that we have with finding an architect. So it would be very fair to say that even though these numbers would drop significantly, there would still be a very healthy benefit from doing this project. Just the net present value discounted at 10% with $50 million even if that changed some, it still lets you know that this would make a lot of sense to do at some point. Next slide, please. I don't think we need to say anything on this slide. This, other than Jennings owns 9 of the parcels, totally 4.5 acres. The other 2.25 acres are owned by 8 other entities. So there would be a lot of legwork to be accomplished in order to either put together a partnership or find somebody who could acquire these various parcels from these various owners, and then partner with that particular development entity. Next slide. So the assumption here, which is I sort of alluded to, is that the only type of assembler of putting these various parcels together would be a very experienced private sector developer. And you guys are probably aware well of that. The role that the city can play, which would be multiple roles, a catalyst to recruit a developer to acquire and purchase these assets and then demolish them, facilitate by establishing ground rules with the developer and be clear on what it is that you would like to see on that site. And then, of course, it would be a partner in improving the 4-mile run water flow and adjoining green space, which would add significantly to the project's amenities. Emily, can I share the screen for a second?
Yeah, of course. I'll stop sharing mine. Give me 1 second.
Okay. I want to show you. Okay, great. Before I do that real quickly, I do want to not acknowledge the various consultants who helped us, who provided just terrific input. And they are Evan Goldman, who you guys probably know from EYA because of the project they're working on in the city. Trini Rodriguez, who's a good close friend and landscape architect, owns Parker Rodriguez firm. And I'm going to show you some of her slides on the green space. She really did a great job and gave us a lot of interesting information that was helpful. Jim's son, Brant Snyder at P.N. Hoffman, who also was quite helpful. And then one of your colleagues at the city, Garrison Kitt, helped us with the massing. So he was our default architect to get, so we could render something so you guys could get a sense of what this might look like. And then David Mayhood of the Mayhood Companies was also really helpful in a number of ways. One, of course, he's got a condo sales company, but he knows the residential market quite well, and hearing his views and hearing Evan's views from EYA as well as Brant's, we really had a lot of views to be able to kind of get to a point where we thought we had really solid information. And then lastly, another one of your colleagues, Carrie Odenino, was also quite helpful. So sharing screen is, let's see here. Can you guys see this? Do you see anything?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so let me go back and see where I can share the screen. Camera, mute. Oh, here it is. Okay. Now, can you see this?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not, huh?
Sometimes there's a lag, so sometimes it takes a couple of seconds to show up for other people.
Okay. Where it says share tray, that was the right button that I clicked.
Yeah, so you'll go to right next to the leave button, the red leave button, to the left. There's a button with an up arrow. If you press that, and then press screen. There's two different options. There's screen and window. You're going to want to share your screen.
Okay, so let me try this again. So, oh, more actions. Enter full screen. So when I go to, I'm at the arrow, it says open share tray. And then it gives me several options. One is to show device settings, show meeting details, enter full screen, show background effects, keypad, and turn off incoming video.
Maybe in the interest of time, we can move on from that. If you can figure it out, we can do that. Otherwise, we've only budgeted maybe another 15 minutes or so for conversation on this. So in the interest of time, and I don't know if there was more you needed to present or if you wanted to open up to any questions.
No, that was pretty much it. I just wanted to give you guys some ideas.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for doing that for your students, I guess. And clearly they spent a lot of time, and it's obviously a part of town that it's an interesting part of town. It's in some ways, I guess by traditional measures underutilized, and it's probably a part of town a lot of people maybe overlook. It's a little bit off the beaten path, so to speak. Although ironically, there are some some interesting businesses back there that I know are well liked in the city as well, and that's kind of been also a push and pull as far as losing some of our independent. It's ironically it's some of the most affordable commercial space in town. And there's a reason for that, I guess, but it does bring up some interesting issues as far as redevelopment goes. I guess again, we have a little bit of time for questions. I don't know if commissioners have any comments or questions or about the project, or Jim has his hand up. Mr. Snyder, go ahead.
Yes, I would want to thank Michael and the students for all their hard work. What you're seeing is some of the complexities of what it takes to begin to think about redevelopment of an area. This is some 7 acres. If you think of the West End, where we have about 9+ acres, this might, and it's zoned industrial, it's planned for mixed use, multiple owners. This is a site that may need a special revitalization district to guide the future of it. And be able to phase development. Some of you were here when the small area plan was done. I think, Melissa, you were part of that original planning commission group. This was the first small area plan done. And for those of you who haven't taken a look recently at the North Washington Street small area plan, this was seen as a gateway to the city with mixed use development along Washington Street and Jefferson Street. A real gateway park along 4 Mile Run to get rid of all the buildings and the auto effluent that goes into the stream. The stream is basically invisible. And so this would be a gateway to the city. I think Michael mentioned $9 million worth of value. This is really underperforming as a property. And so redevelopment of it to create a better gateway to the city, more value, a mix of uses, open space that can be a gateway and utility to the community. As you know, many neighborhoods and towns use open space and water as a thing that drives their community. So I would, if you haven't seen it, take a look at the small area plan. This may need special help. I think in the CIP, there is money, about $15 million, perhaps, Brent, that was put in towards 4 Mile Run improvements. This might need other infrastructure improvements. Clearly, it's where the water goes from storms in this part of the city. So at any rate, I just ask you all to think about that. It certainly is an area that should have a better future. We have a plan. How do we make things happen? It may take some special efforts. One of the things in the city is the M1 zone does not allow mixed use. It doesn't allow hotels, doesn't allow residential. And we have talked about, I believe, in the West End plan about maybe creating a doorway between the M districts and the B districts so that through special exception, you could have mixed use projects in the M zones. They're going to be, they might remain that way, but you offer a way for them to redevelop in a better fashion. The Gordon Road Triangle has similar zoning, and the East End, Eden Center is also zoned industrial. So we have a lot of industrial land that's not functionally and that accessible from a zoning point of view to do good development. So that's a structural problem that needs to be fixed, I think, in the zoning ordinance. So I just wanted to leave you with that. I mean, think about the value presently. As Brent said, there's some interesting businesses there. I think the plan calls for trying to retain some of those, but the buildings are tired and the uses are not what the city wants to be in the future. And 4 Mile Run could be a beautiful place. Some of you may have gone down to Arlington and seen what was done in the old industrial area near the airport. There's a new fabulous park down there, and it is possible to change older industrial areas into something really fabulous. So I just wanted to end with that, and thank you for your time.
I've got so much to learn, which is a good thing.
A lot of voices. People just mute if they're not
I
talking.
gotta learn about poll taxes.
Sorry, I don't know who's talking. You're not. If you could use the hand tool, it helps because we got a large group tonight. Miss Weiss, you had your hand up.
Thank you. This is a very interesting presentation. Nice ideas for that part of town. For me, it was particularly interesting to see the financials. That's because that's not typically something that we in the Planning Commission see. And I'm thinking about the value that a parcel like this provides to the city, not just in terms of tax revenue and activation, vibrant community gateway, but some of the other values we're looking for in our community, like affordable housing, more climate resilient development, energy efficient buildings. And, you know, when we as the Planning Commission ask about these things, we are sometimes told it's not going to work for one reason or another. I'm curious to see if you costed out any of those types of benefits that we're looking for, because, you know, it would be something I would be interested in understanding. You know, how much of a haircut do developers really need to take when they're thinking about some of the capital contributions or other types of contributions to the city?
We did not price it out. We did have a lot of discussion, and Jim was talking about around affordable housing component, around maintaining some of the existing businesses, also trying to maintain some of the architectural character of what that industrial space is like to some extent. Jim, I will send Trini's PowerPoint to you, and you can share with the commission. And so I think it will enlighten people's ideas of or imagination of what can actually occur there, which it completely enlivens the place and does become, in fact, a gateway into the city. As far as the affordable housing component and the green areas, the green matters that you were referencing, we didn't have enough time to get that far down into it. As it relates to affordable housing in general, it's a constant battle. I spent a good part of my career in the affordable housing space, and so I understand the challenges both from low income as well as workforce housing. And it gets back to the cost of land ultimately, and what other inducements a governmental entity can provide to make it worth the risk that's being taken to develop. The haircut that you reference, I don't think of so much as a haircut, because generally speaking, and Bob can talk to this better than I can probably, being a for-profit developer is not in the business of haircuts. They're in the business of, building things and making a profit in the course of doing it. That being said, whatever the governmental entity can do to facilitate, expedite, partner, lower costs, contribute to get to the outcomes that you're seeking is the way it's going to happen. We've got the low-income housing tax credit program, which provides, some modest. It's a $9 billion, $10 billion a year industry. It's not near enough, but that's how the equity gets into that space. You might be familiar with the Washington Housing Initiative, which has a private funded model where they're raising $150 million to create workforce housing in the country, in the region. And the idea behind that is you work with private companies and other related entities that care about affordable housing or workforce housing, and you create a model that provides a very, very modest return to those investors, which then significantly lowers the cost of the capital to get something done. That's an interesting model to take a look at. I know the guy who heads it up. I can introduce you guys to him, and he can walk you guys through how they created this model. But it's really an interesting one. And the idea is not just to get it built, but to maintain it in perpetuity. And so there are two parts. You've got the sort of the equity investment component that raises the capital, acquires the asset of the land or the existing asset that will be redeveloped. And then they have a conservancy that takes ownership of it after the acquisition and oversee and maintain and manage it as workforce housing for the long term. It's a very interesting model. You obviously need investors who care about social impact. They're out there, but that's another way of thinking about how to go about achieving what you're talking about.
We did make it clear that affordable housing is a very important component of any project in the city that has residential, and that would have to be worked into the financials of a project like this, because we are looking to have a mixture of incomes that can support workers and a variety of incomes here in the city, which is we really don't have enough gradations of affordable housing. So that was made pretty clear. I think our minimum at this point was officially 6%. That's been evolving into a greater amount as we've been talking about projects. You'll hear that in the next project, the Founders Row 2 project. So it was one of the things that was emphasized in terms of a project like this, if it were ever developed, would have to have a strong component like that.
Yeah. Bob, do you want to add anything? You're on mute.
He's muted. Mr. Wolf, you're muted if you're trying to.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now we
Yes.
can.
Yeah.
Like the commercial. Yeah, let me give you the developer's perspective. An important part of the student's mission was to create a land use plan that provided a uses and density that resulted in a profitable project. You're never going to find a development team to go to all the trouble of assembling 17 parcels, which, by the way, is extremely difficult, if there isn't profit at the end. So they gave to you a set of uses and densities that creates a profitable project, a project that any developer would do because the profits are sufficient to attract them. Given that, you can ask the developer, if you were to choose one to do this, they should develop green, however you define that, whether it's leads or something more. You can ask for a percent of affordable units, varying from 40 to 80% of the median income. And you can do that because this project provides profits sufficient to support that requirement. That was part of the deal here. So I think you've got leverage to do that if you were to go forward with this project. And the key to this project is a rezoning. You've got to increase the land value from industrial to mixed use, which would include residential. Without that, the project can't happen. It simply cannot happen. Simply tearing down old buildings and then rebuilding industrial, not many people are going to be interested in that. So I would say that this is really dependent on the rezoning to create the kinds of uses we've proposed here.
Thank you for that perspective. Mr. Puentes, you had your hand up, and then it went down. Were you, anything else you wanted to add?
No, that covered it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, listen, this is, again, a fascinating topic, this part of town especially, and we could probably spend the rest of the evening chatting about it. And I agree with Mr. Snyder, having, using, student help on some of these, these big picture and long range ideas has been extremely helpful in the city over the years, and we definitely want to see that continue. It's a great opportunity for them, but it's also a great opportunity for us to get, talented folks thinking about these things and helping to spark the discussion and provide some ideas and do some groundwork on these types of things. So it's much appreciated. Absolutely. So again, thank you for your time, and thank your students for everything, for all the work they did. And this is, again, something I hope we can continue to focus on in our work going forward.
Our pleasure. By the way, Jim, give me a call tomorrow.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
If you're looking for another project, we can talk.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Commission. This was very gracious of you to spend this time with the class and this project. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, let's see, real quick before we move on to our kind of main event for the evening. Number 5 was our, as we always check with Ms. Bazemore, any receipt of petitions for things not on the agenda.
Nope. There have been none.
Checking. Okay, well then that will take us, again, we're doing the work session since that's going to be the bulk of the discussion before some of our other items. So that brings us to item 6, which is our work session for the evening, which is the Founders Row Phase 2 project, the special exception applications and a rezoning application. I know we have the applicant team here. They had a lively discussion last week at City Council, but I guess things went well enough that you're here, referred out to boards and commissions, and here you are with us for a work session. We're happy to discuss this important project and provide what we hope will be valuable feedback on this. We're feeling it'll be the first of perhaps multiple times we discuss this with you in a informal way. Just for, and I know we have others, just to kind of run through how I think Paul Stoddard and I discussed, the work session. I know Paul did, and we discussed this, extended an invitation to some of representatives from our other boards and commissions, and obviously those boards and commissions are going to have their own meetings to discuss, their particular concerns. I think the thought was, since it's been a while, and since this is a high-profile project, there would be some benefit to inviting members of the other boards and commissions. I was not planning to do the same way we did for the town hall or whatever we called it in the spring, kind of a round robin. But if members of those other boards and commissions have specific targeted questions, clarifying questions that they would like to bring up, once we've gone through the planning commissioner questions, I will open it up to our other guests that are here to bring up any questions they might have. We're going to start like we usually do with a staff presentation, and then the applicant's here, Mr. Muffler and his team is here and I'm sure they have a presentation and things they want to share before we then dive into planning commissioner comments and questions. And so if everyone's kind of clear on the framework there, I will, I guess, throw it over to staff, and I believe Mr. Hollern. I know Mr. Fuller, you're here.
Yes.
For Mr. Stoddard, so maybe I guess we'll start with you, and then we'll move on from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this point, I'm going to introduce this item by turning it over to Jeff Hollern, who's the project manager on it. I am covering for the director this evening. So, Jeff, and then they'll be followed by the developer. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Hollern with the planning staff. I'm the case planner for Founders Row 2. Planning Commission is requested to review and provide feedback on the amended second submission for the Founders Row 2 mixed-use development proposed at the intersection of West Broad and Southwest Street on approximately 2 acres of land. City Council referred the proposed project to boards and commissions on September 27th, 2021. The project requires legislative action, which include an ordinance for a zoning map amendment to rezone a parcel from T1 to B2, and a pair of resolutions that would grant the special exception for residential use within a mixed-use development and up to 30 feet of height bonus for a proposed building height of 76 feet. After reviewing the amended second submission of the project, staff has made several recommendations for a future submission as well as council's final consideration. I'll just go through them quickly. The first one, as it relates to significant commercial space, we're looking the applicant to provide greater commercial uses and more specificity of proposed commercial programming and how it will fill a significant community or neighborhood need. In regards to the environment, we're looking for strengthening of environmental design of the proposal, including the amount of open space and green space, use of green infrastructure, availability of electrical vehicle charging stations, and the reduction of heat island impacts. As it relates to affordable housing and public facility impacts, we're looking for improvements to the affordable housing program and the utility and facility contributions in the VCs. For the neighborhood, we're looking for continued coordination to address neighborhood concerns as it relates to transportation and safety. And then as far as urban design, we're looking for continued refinement and improvement of the streetscape, architecture, and building design. Just a quick overview of the project for anyone who is unfamiliar. This is a mixed-use building with a maximum height of 76 feet. It is 6 levels of residential and multifamily rental apartments. There's 280 in total, and above ground floor retail. The ground floor retail is about 15,000 square feet along West Broad Street and Southwest Street. There's just under 6,000 square feet of ground and second floor office space, along with 5,000 square feet of dedicated co-working space. The project also includes 433 spaces of underground parking. At this point, Emily, if you could, I'm just going to switch over. Attachment number 1 is the staff report that was just seen by City Council. So I'm just going to shift over to that where a lot of our analysis is. So like I said, Council has reviewed the latest development materials in 3 of their September work sessions. General items that they had discussed was that they needed to see demonstrated commercial performance. I'm on line 41, Emily, I'm sorry. They needed to see demonstrated commercial performance of Founders Row 1, which is currently under construction and seeking COs right now. Council needed to see strengthening of the commercial significance of the project. They wanted to see energy efficiency goals met. They wanted to see the continued outreach with the neighborhood, and they were most interested in how the voluntary concessions compare with other recent projects. In lines 141 to 151, there's an outline of comments received through Council and Planning Commission work sessions, including those received during the April town hall that we had with the Planning Commission. That also include a lot of the representatives from boards and commissions who voiced their initial concerns. As you can see, in many cases, the applicant has responded to those comments in either their resubmissions or in a work session setting. So I won't go through all of those right now, but they're in the staff report for you to look over. On lines 231 through 486, there's staff analysis of the project against the special exception criteria, which has not changed much since the April work session. But there have been updates to the primary criteria. If you remember correctly, the first submission, we analyzed the project against the the last version of the special exception primary criteria, which has since been updated. So the second submission was against the updated criteria. We've noted in the staff report that there's been a positive net new or renovated commercial space, as well as an increase in revenue to the city that are present in the current application. Down on line 566, as I mentioned before, City Council has referred the project out to boards and commissions, and we have a tentative schedule moving forward at the bottom of this staff report, with the project making its rounds to boards and commissions throughout the months of October and November. We can expect that each board or commission will be able to have a more in-depth discussion with either the applicant or with staff, and be able to voice a little bit more of their concerns or questions. One note I might just make before I wrap up is that the very bottom of the staff report has the draft legislation for the resolution and ordinance. I just want it to be known that the proposed motion indicates a March 28th, 2022 public hearing date, but that's subject to change as a result of council guidance. But we are aiming for a spring 2022 action on this project this time. With that, I can turn it over to the applicant. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Holler, are there any questions at this point for city staff? Okay, and maybe what we'll do is we'll get the applicant's presentation, and then of course we have to refer back to city staff. You guys will still be. All right, Mr. Muffler. I think that means it's you're up.
Time for my show. Well, I appreciate that. Emily, is it okay if I share my screen to share the presentation?
Yep.
Okay.
That works.
Give me 1 second. Are you all seeing my screen at this point?
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all for having me here tonight. Thank you for that intro as well, Jeff. As I was preparing this presentation today, I did go back and look at the presentation that we put together about 6 months ago and the great feedback that was received. And I'm hopeful that what we show here tonight is that the comments, the critiques, the thoughts that were offered up in April were taken to heart and have been incorporated to the best of our ability at this point. This is obviously just the beginning of the process with boards and commissions and the public process. So we are looking forward to the evolution of this, working towards that hopeful approval in the spring. But thank you for having us. This presentation is meant to be comprehensive. I know that there are people here from other boards and commissions, so I do want to ensure that I'm touching on all the pertinent items here, but I will do my best to work through this as quickly as possible and then answer any questions that you all might have. So just as a reintroduction, Founders Row Phase 2 is incorporating of the two lots at the intersection of Southwest and West Broad Street, namely the carpet store, the cabinet store, along with the vacant Rite Aid. There's about 25,000 square feet in both of those buildings, but as anyone who's driven by are aware, they are and have been functionally vacant or obsolete for many years now. These pictures kind of highlight the condition that the property is in. We do not own the property, to be clear. We are the contract purchasers on the property. We have made an effort as of this past weekend, frankly, to maintain the property on behalf of the owners so that it presents better for the neighborhood. But just want to make clear that that's the situation that we are in today. By way of an updated program, the original program is frankly what you all saw last time we were here in April. And what is currently proposed is fairly dramatically different in terms of the programming, the architecture, the voluntary concessions, and we'll touch on all of those later. The biggest change since you all last saw this is that an entire story of the building was eliminated. We have reduced the total homes by about 40. Total residential square footage has decreased by about 16%, while the total commercial square footage has increased by something like 60%. Open space has improved considerably, and that's again just on the programming side of this as well. But the current program consists of 280 residential homes, all your conventional market. We have maintained the 12% affordability proposal. And then our commercial is composed of about 15,000 square feet of retail, 6,000 square feet of office, 5,000 square feet of co-working space. We've been working on this project for quite some time. Frankly, we first brought this to the city in January of 2020 before the pandemic. It has evolved considerably since then. This kind of reiterates what I just said in terms of a reduction in the residential density, an increase in the commercial density, placing an emphasis on ground floor and open space, a significant improvement in voluntary concessions, be it environmental, cash contributions, and others, and a significant improvement in the architecture, as you'll see as we click through this as well. The community benefits, and I do believe that staff has the total summary. It was shown at council meetings, but these are staff's numbers. The benefit package proposed for Founders Row 2 translates to about $41,000 per door, which compares very favorably to the Washington and Broad project, the most recent project that was passed. And as you can see, it's nearly a 50% increase over the benefits package for Founders Row 1. So we do believe that what's been put forth to the city is considerable, is thoughtful, and has incorporated a lot of feedback from various different groups. We'll touch on most of these as we go through, but this is just kind of a comprehensive summary of what those VCs are. Walking you through the improvements to the ground floor, again, this is just kind of that site plan. But as we walk around the building, some of the significant changes that you'll see here is that we have reduced the number of garage entrances on Broad Street to 1. It's now on the left-hand project, which will reduce the traffic at the intersection. Essentially, all of Broad Street is concentrated for ground floor retail, and we'll touch more on that moving forward. As you make your way around the West Street corner, we have a large open space that we feel like anchors the project, and we've turned it Founders Plaza. We look forward to working on boards and commissions in terms of how that evolves, but we do have some concepts to share with you all. In addition, adjacent to that Founders Plaza is our proposed office space, which could also be considered flex retail, additional retail space. And as we keep moving south on West Street, there is the second parking entrance, along with the co-working space that would be on the ground floor of the property there as you make your way around West Street, around the building's entrance as well. Once we drop down to Ellison Street, there is a significant change in the building's architecture, as there has been from the get-go. We do have a park area on the corner that we're called the Lawn, that frankly has evolved in conversations with council and is now more of a green emphasis, as opposed to more hard seating and commercial. This is supposed to signify that transition from the commercial to the residential gateway. The building tapers significantly. In fact, there's 2 tapers, one that the top story tapers, and then there's an additional drop off from 75 feet to 35 feet in townhome style apartments that look similar in concept, at least, to what is occurring at phase 1 along Park Avenue to match the residential context. The residential community, this part has not changed tremendously, except for the fact that we have removed the age-restricted component. These are now just traditional apartment homes. They are smaller in average, which creates a lower price point for the average renter. We believe that should attract a younger renter into the city, which is a newer demographic, frankly, for the city of Falls Church. We have capped the amount of large units, the 2-bedroom plus units, which helps with school system, helps with fiscal impact, helps with a lot of things as well, and again, keeps that price point lower. Most importantly, 12% of the total homes proposed are affordable, split at 60% and 80% AMI, and just as a point of comparison, Founders Row 1 was 6% affordable, so it's essentially double that. The variety of commercial uses that we're trying to propose here, again, 15,000 square feet of neighborhood serving ground floor retail, a minimum of which 50%, so 7,500 square feet, will be food and beverage or restaurant use concentrated along Broad Street. As you can see in the pictures in the inset, there will be significant streetscape improvements, outdoor seating that really activate that corner and that stretch of West Broad Street. If I were to summarize this as a comparison to phase 1, which is a question we get often, phase 1 is a lifestyle entertainment center anchored by a movie theater. We'll talk about phase 1 later. This is meant to be your neighborhood serving daily retail use. And I've got a merchandising plan that I'll share with you as well. But whereas phase 1 is more of your date night, night out type atmosphere, This is your weekday afternoon, any day of the week, any time of the day type of retail that you can come and use. We do have proposed for flex office space, which is something that has been a refrain that we've heard often, is that some kind of flexible office space would be nice in new projects, along with a shared co-working amenity that could be utilized by both residents and the community at large on a membership basis. The merchandising here, a merchandising plan here is shown. Again, consists of a combination of full service and fast casual restaurant space, along with neighborhood serving retail. We would love to have a convenience mart or a pharmacy somewhere that neighbors and residents can walk to or drive to for daily goods, along with other services, be it a barbershop, day spa, bakery, coffee shop, deli. This is feedback directly from neighbors we have spoken with, residents, citizens in the community, in terms of the retail that they feel they could use above and beyond, you know, the cool stuff, the cooler stuff that you might find at phase one, the more higher end restaurants, the more boutique shopping. And again, the bottom inset picture here is Founders Plaza, which we'll touch on shortly as well. The architecture, this is going to be a series of before and after pictures, which I think really emphasize the not only the removal of the sixth residential story, but also the just the holistic changes that we have made to the facades. You'll see the tapering effect and step down along Ellison Street, the removal of the garage, in addition to the more open space that we had. So this was the west end of the Broad Street facade. This is how it looks today. These aren't as dramatic as they are when you turn the corner. This was the east portion of the West Broad Street facade, as you can see, with a second parking entrance, which is now much more streetscape friendly, lighter materials, more modern architecture. As you make the corner, this was an imposing facade, again, large, no breaks in it. And now we have a massive break in it, a reduction in stories, again, an increase in the quality materials, in mason materials, and lighter coloring. This was the Southwest Street facade. This is now the Southwest Street facade with the Founders Plaza anchoring the center of the community. This was Ellison Street at the corner of Ellison and West Street. This is now what we're proposing for the corner of Ellison and West Street. And it's hard to tell here in the rendering, but at the very top, you can see that top floor does step back another 10 feet, which is an additional emphasis to try to taper this whole effect as you transition to Ellison Street. And then the inset is the picture of what that condition is today. So you'll note just this dramatic improvement that we're proposing. Finally, this is the Ellison Street facade, which again, we have reduced, tapered, changed colors, increased the facade materials. What you can't see if you turn the corner here, because frankly, it's buried behind the shopping center, there are two additional open air courtyards on the west facade that are not for public or private use, but they are green roofs, which plays into our environmental proposal as well. Again, one of the key features here is the open space on the Founders Plaza. It's meant to be a public space, so not just for the office or the retail or the residents, but a true public space for gathering, along with commercial activation. Well, we would like to anchor this in the center with an interactive art feature that we look forward to working with boards and councils on. We have taken into account the topography for accessibility considerations, along with a variety of hardscape and architectural treatments. You can't see it in the rendering, but there's a tremendous amount of built-in seating here. Usable built-in seating so that people can grab a cup of coffee, grab a newspaper if they still read newspapers, interact outside, eat outside, and use this as a public park space. It's much smaller, but at the corner of Ellison Street, again, this is, we would technically be able to build and utilize this space, but we've tried to carve off a space to utilize, again, for seating, for a pathway, to put in some trees and greenery, to incorporate what we're calling the lawn is a gathering area, if you will, but a transition area, most importantly, a residential gateway, as we make the transition not only north to south, but also east to west, as people are connecting to the W&OD trail here with wider sidewalks, underground utilities, landscaping, front lawns, stoops as well on the building as well. From sustainability, there's been a large focus of us on sustainability. We are committing in our voluntary concessions to a LEED Gold commitment, plus a minimum of a 20% improvement in the baseline energy performance. We've included 2 green roofs, an open space ratio of about 31%, which include the lawn and the Founders Plaza, along with interior courtyards and the 2 green roofs. Our tree canopy coverage exceeds that at phase 1 pretty substantially. From a stormwater perspective, we're offering 20% over the 10-year runoff rate, along with a commitment to the stormwater fund. And then from car charging stations, we've tried to meet the city's criteria of having 5% installed and future-proofing conduit for up to 50% of the stations. Transportation and parking is a large topic that I'm not going to dive into the nitty-gritty on right now. It has been repeated. We have said it from the get-go. It's been repeated every meeting since, that meeting with the neighbors, working with the city staff and engineers on solving traffic solutions here is a big part of this project. We're very excited now to be in the boards and commissions process and to be able to roll up our sleeves and do that. I think the most important thing to mention here at the moment is that without this site and without any improvements to this site, that intersection will reduce in quality just based on the construction and the improvements that are happening in the city. With the proposals that we've had thus far, we can bring that signal back to where it is today, and it's our belief that we can improve upon that as well. The main strategies for transportation here are signal timing and phasing at the Broad and West, completely restructuring the way that signal times and phases, improving pedestrian crossings throughout the site, both at Ellison and West Street, and then at Broad Street as well. We are having a request for a 17% parking reduction, which we believe is justified. And one large change that's happened since we last met is that we have met with city staff, or the engineers rather, briefly, but we have socialized the concept and they are supportive of it, of creating a median break along West Broad Street to allow for left turn out movements from the parking garage, which is considerable. Because that means that people using this building, residents or otherwise, can get to West Broad Street without having to go on to West Street and then making a left onto Broad Street. So this would be a significant solution to help alleviate traffic at that stoplight. The rest of the things on this page, frankly, are ideas that we are analyzing, working with neighbors, and discussing with city staff. One point I would like to make is that we have committed $100,000 in our capital contributions to sidewalk and street improvements via the city's, I guess they call it the Missing Links program. But essentially, we know that we will not be able to cure all traffic solutions and pedestrian issues at this juncture. So we've committed $100,000 to assist with that moving forward. From a fiscal impact perspective, I'll touch on this very, very briefly. The fiscal impact essentially translates to $210,000 per acre, which is roughly in line with the city's average for mixed-use projects. I have advocated in the past and continue to do so that the student ratio used in the fiscal impact model is fairly conservative. So I do think that this program offers a significant more revenue than might be stated. But regardless of that, at its peak, this current site, when it was being utilized, was contributing $60,000 in revenue to the city. The fiscal impact model today highlights that as $1.6 million. And that fiscal impact does not reflect the latest VCs and commercial mix, so it would improve slightly as well. Lastly, before I wrap this up, phase 1, I realize that this project needs to and should be evaluated and stand on its own merits, while at the same time there's an accountability factor for both the city and obviously for myself as the developer to follow through on what's happening in phase 1. You may have seen or heard that as of last Monday, we welcomed our first residents into phase 1, about 10 years after that project was first conceptualized and discussed. So that was a significant milestone, and I believe should be recognized and applaud the city staff, boards, commissions, and councils for the project getting to where it is today. More importantly, though, for the context of these conversations, from a commercial perspective, I will not belabor the point that 2020 was a significant detriment to our commercial. But what I will say is this in context. I can count on 2 hands truly last year, on 2 hands, so less than 10 fingers, how many retail tours we had last year. We are now doing more than 10 tours per week here. We have currently agreed to terms with 5 retail tenants. Those leases, I believe, will be completed by the end of the month. In fact, 1 or 2 of them are going to be completed maybe by the end of this week. We will be making those announcements, but on a broader picture of the retail that's there, we are either agreed to terms or in advanced term sheet discussions with 75% of the retail. So I do appreciate the patience and the understanding of what occurred last year, the magnitude of that effect on the retail industry, especially the movie theater industry. But I am not only pleased with the activity that we're seeing, but frankly, with the quality of the tenancy that we're seeing as well. I think that the city's going to be pleased with what they see, because there's always a balance between quality and rush to get something done. And as much as we wanted to get something done last year, we also wanted to maintain the quality of the retail as we promised throughout the initial approval process. So what I can say at this point is stay tuned, but stay tuned very soon for initial announcements on retail at phase 1. So lastly, I'm just going to leave up a page of the community benefits, because frankly, this is somewhat of a summary of all the things that I touched on tonight. But at this point, I will stop talking. I appreciate the time, and I'm happy to answer any questions and take any comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Muffler. Yeah, that was pretty comprehensive. It has been a long road. I mean, certainly Founders Row 1, I guess it has been just about 10 years. And it is significant to see the progress there. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of that as it relates to this project. I guess, okay, with that, I'll open it up to commissioners. And if we were in person, we'd kind of just go down the row here. We can't do that. So we'll have to use the good old yellow hands that pop up. And I see Mr. Stevens is first out of the gate with that, so he gets to go first.
Okay, well, I do have a few comments and a few questions for Mr. Muffler. First of all, regarding commercial space, I would agree that improving commercial designs, including more specificity for, I think, what you call the merchandising program, is desirable. But I would not recommend setting some fixed percentage target for increasing the overall commercial space for this site. For one thing, the traditional definition of office space has been changing. People used to leave their home every day to go to work in an employer's office building, whereas now people often do that same work for at least some of the time in their own living space. Yet we call that space 100% residential. So the definitions, I think, need some adjustment. Second, there's a lot of concern that commercial space has been overbuilt throughout the whole country and also here in Northern Virginia over the last couple of decades. And so I think the result of that is that not every place can support marquee commercial establishments. Whether a project contributes financially, as well as whether it makes the city a better place to live, would seem to me to be the better ways to look at establishing priorities. Second, on the environmental issues, am I right, Mr. Muffler, that the spaces for parking 142 bikes are planned?
Ooh, you've challenged me there, Mr. Stevens. I don't know the exact count. I do know it meets city standards. That's all I can say.
Okay, I think I pulled that off of one of the charts.
It's on the sheet. Then that's the number.
Well, that's commendable. That's a very large number. That's certainly a lot larger than I've seen on some of the other projects. How do you think that most residents will access the W&OD? Would that be off of Ellison or off of Broad Street?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the direct answer to that. I believe, off of Ellison provides probably a less impeded, because you're not crossing Broad Street, but Broad Street also offers the ability to travel to maybe the Metro quicker. And also, it brings you by Founders Row 1. I think what we've seen at Founders Row 1 based on retail activity, maybe even somewhat counterintuitively, is that the prime retail spaces are the spaces facing the W&OD trail. So I do think that's going to be a draw.
Well, you might want to check with the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority just to see about those entrances onto the W&OD trail and see if any adjustments there need to take place. Another one on Broad Street is a pretty neglected entrance there. So I'm sure if you've got 240 residents that they're going to be wanting to have a nicer access to the trail. On the subject of electric vehicle chargers, you mentioned 15 equipped stations and conduit for 15 additional stations. Are each of those stations able to handle just one car or two cars?
Yeah, so just so you're aware, Mr. Stevens, we actually provided staff with an updated copy of the VCs following last week's council hearing. The new commitment is that 5% of the total spaces would have EVCs chargers, either singles or duals, just whatever that number is, they'll have, that's how many chargers there will be. individually. And then in addition to that, 50% of the total parking will have future-proofing conduit to allow for additional chargers as we progress over the decades to come.
Okay, I think we're making good progress there. On energy efficiency, I think more precision is needed in the commitment to achieve that 20% improvement in energy efficiency versus the LEED version 4 standard. But I'll quickly admit that the city's code language itself is in need of some improvement and tightening up. So I hope the final product here, we can specify just what is meant by that 20%.
Yeah, and I'm happy to, the surface level context is that LEED, and we can show this, is that LEED Gold requires, a certain energy performance baseline. I believe it's about, whatever the energy performance baseline is to get to LEED Gold, this would be a 20% increase or decrease, I guess, in energy usage over what that baseline requirement is. So it's not just LEED Gold, it's LEED Gold Plus.
I start to feel more comfortable when I see things like the ASHRAE 90.1 standard or energy use intensity, things like that are specific, as opposed to just very general comments. So I'll just identify that. My understanding is that you're proposing that the building be all electric, including the appliances.
Correct.
Okay, I think that is commendable. In fact, I think that is more important than fitting the building with rooftop solar, even though that's always a nice symbolic thing to have. Because any system that would go on this amount of space that you have on the roof would cover only a small fraction of the building's total power load. And since the electricity grid is projected to now have considerably reduced greenhouse gas emissions over the next couple of decades, having an all-electric building, it will contribute the most towards reducing the city's greenhouse gas emissions. So I think that's a point worth highlighting. On urban design, one of the main suggestions I have is to, as far as improving the project, is to continue working on the architecture. And hopefully what you can achieve is an end result that is more unique, distinctive, and pleasing. I think one of the risks that we have right now is we have too many large lookalike apartment buildings developing along our commercial corridors. So I would encourage you to work with the Architectural Advisory Board. I see Mr. Wade is here today. Also, if it's possible to improve the sense of community with this project, since there's no market square like there is with Founders Row 1, that might be something to consider as well. So one additional issue I want to comment on is expressed by some is the concern on how the project will affect vehicle traffic on Broad and West. For one thing, traffic doesn't always follow a static trajectory. Rather, it will adjust to new circumstances in ways that are hard for traffic studies to predict, although I'll be interested in some of my colleagues' comments on that. I find that people tend to choose other routes whenever it's possible to achieve their needs, especially for travel that's discretionary. Second, I don't think developing our city in ways to meet our needs should be secondary to the need for a slightly faster commute for some. Also, I find that there's an inverse relationship between traffic level of service and the level of economic development. So it's not likely that you'll find much economic or social life around intersections that have an A level of service. So the remedies that you proposed, namely adjustments in lane markings, traffic signal reprogramming, and a comprehensive TDM, that those are plans that are all worthwhile and it may well be sufficient to address the concerns that have been raised. So to sum up, I'd recommend that the City Council give more value to the positive contributions of this project, to be more flexible regarding commercial space requirements and concerns over traffic, and to work with you, the developer, to continue to seek improvements in the areas of environmental and building design. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stevens. I believe Ms. Comont was next.
Thank you. I'd actually like to align myself with all of Mr. Stevens' very smart comments. It was a really great overview. And then I wanted to ask you about parking. I see that you're requesting a reduction. You're proposing 365 spaces while the city is requiring 433 per our standards. This is for 280 mostly studio and one-bedroom apartments. If you look at table 3 in the staff report, which is at line 516, it actually shows the actual rate of vehicles per unit in some of our recent developments. And that's about 0.8 to 0.9. The rate that you're proposing would be at 1.3. So I'm actually wondering if you have too much parking in the building for the residents. I think kind of building off of some of Mr. Stevens' comments, if we want to attract more people to the city who are not, owners of multiple vehicles or maybe even any vehicle at all, I think we really need to stop building so much parking for our residential projects. So that was one thing that I wanted to ask about, or maybe comment on. And then I'm actually also curious. I think that the 85th percentile speeds on West Street are horrifying. And so anything that you can do to improve the safety of pedestrians in that area, I hope that if this project moves forward, that we will have a lot more pedestrians and cyclists in that area. That obviously it's sorely needed today. And so that would be a really great benefit for the whole neighborhood in that project. And then the other thing that I wanted to ask about is the rationale for not providing a left turn into the project on Broad or off of Broad. Can you talk about that a little?
Sure. So to your prior point on the traffic speeds along West Street, as you'll see on this, many of the ideas that we've come up with are not only to alleviate, turn movements from Ellison Street and to help that intersection flow better, but a lot of it is based around speed and traffic calming. And those all interplay together. If you have people speeding, it's harder to get out. People are rushing. Anyways, it just makes it a mess. So, whether it's flashing beacons, we're looking at stop movements, don't block the box chokers, a lot of things for us to evaluate, and then we'll continue to do so. In terms of the left turn in movement, there's art and there's science to this. The simple answer is it would create a lot of congestion on Broad Street, right? Like that's the simple answer, because now you're stopped on a lane of Broad Street. It's not like there's a dedicated turn lane. You're stopped, you're blocking traffic, and that backs up through the intersection. There's engineering analysis into this in terms of how that works. Frankly, beyond my pay grade, I do have my traffic engineer on here. We have met with the city on this briefly. We will meet with the city again on this and pursue this further. But the simple answer is the traffic congestion caused by stopping to make that left-hand turn outweighs the benefit of anything else.
Okay, so there's not room for that sort of like single car queuing lane like there is for the Harris Teeter project.
No,
you can make a left turn.
Yeah, there's no room to expand it. What this is a median break that allows kind of like a refuge area in the middle of the median, so that then you can pull into the lane of traffic.
And that median is not wide enough to provide that sort of pull over area to make a left.
Not that I'm aware of. Again, we'll evaluate, but not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Teets, I think you were next. You there, Melissa?
Yeah, I think she's muted.
Ms. Teets was having audio issues, so she said if we can't hear her, just to skip her.
Perfect.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, her microphone icon just like disappeared. Now it's back, but I don't know. All right, well, if she can join us and get audio, we will go back to her. All right, Mr. Fuentes, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much for all this. I do think this is a very suitable site for a mixed-use project. I really do appreciate also your distinction between the regional serving retail across the street and the locally serving. It's something we don't really talk about very often. I think there's a lot of prejudice about regionally serving retail, and so the fact that you've intentionally kind of designed this for more locally serving, I think, is very helpful as a the intentionality of it, I think, is very smart. I like the plaza. I don't think the lawn is going to be a great gathering place. I'm glad it's there. And want to associate myself then with the other comments from the other commissioners, Ms. Como too, about the parking. First of all, I think it's just so frustrating that the TDM, the Transportation Demand Management Plan, comes at the site plan phase when it's so fundamental to the design of the project now, particularly the parking, right? I mean, it's such a major construction element, and the fact that it relies so much on these TDM tools that come later or that are proposed later there's something wrong with the chronology here. But be that as it may, I think what you proposed up here, what's on the slide, there's a lot of engineering solutions, which are fine. I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference. I think if the one thing that we need to do, if we really want to make a dent, is to make it more difficult to drive and to access a site by driving. We need to make it easier to access through other modes. It's I think that's what we've seen over and over again. So I agree with Ms. Comont's comment that it's probably overparked. I mean, 1.3 is a lot higher than what was 0.89, whatever the other ones were. And I think that's especially if you have locally serving retail in here, theoretically you'd have more people that are walking to the site that aren't coming from far away. So the question I have, and it may be an unfair one if you can answer this, but could you make this site work with lower parking ratios?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is the ratio that we proposed, I believe, is slightly below the parking that was at phase one, which, I don't know what the historic parking reduction requests are in the city, but 17 to 20% is pretty significant. So, it's a matter of where the city feels comfortable pushing that, I guess. But sorry, the short answer is yes, we could park this less.
Understood. I appreciate that. I think that, it is significant because we have these crazy parking requirements that are not appropriate, I think, for the city. Now, we talked a lot about this as a commission, you can probably tell. And I think you probably get some, whatever the city is comfortable with is certainly the big question. And I think you'll get some support, certainly for me on the commission, if you wanted to go for lower parking ratios. I think that's all I had. Actually, one more question. This, again, maybe the ship's already passed on this, but there were some comments from the staff about the ADUs and a proposal to go from 12% to 8%, where 6 was at whatever level of AMI, I can't remember, but then the 2% would be at 40%. Is that something you considered? Seems like a good deal for you all. I don't know where that proposal went, and so consider.
We have not had additional conversations, so I'll say the 10,000 foot view, we are very open to, like a better term, slicing and dicing, the affordability limits, with the city in terms of what their preference is. That proposal right there is plus or minus economically the same as what we've proposed, just because the difference between 40% and 80% is significant in terms of revenue capture. So again, it's really, I don't know, it's kind of what best serves the city.
I think it's something we should consider. We don't, as we all know, we don't have a whole lot of accommodations for folks at 40% AMI too. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Buendes. I don't know if Ms. Teets your audio is working or not. We'll go to, are you there? I don't hear her. All right, well, we'll see if she can sort that out. Mr. Hyra was next, I believe.
Yeah. Can everyone hear me?
Here, Derek, go ahead.
Yeah, again, sorry for coming in late. I was just finishing up an affordable housing class. So, of course, my question is going to be on affordable housing. I just want to say, Mr. Muffler, thank you for your comprehensive presentation. You put a lot of information into a very brief and concise presentation, and I definitely appreciate that, and I'm sure everybody else does. Also, I want to just thank all the commissioners for their thoughtfulness on this and for everybody's comments. I think after Mr. Stevens, like there's not much to add. You hit almost everything, which that was pretty impressive critique and presentation as well. But all right, so on the affordable housing, the ADUs, Mr. Puentes just sort of ended with it, and I am sort of wondering, again, kind of we can go into more detail about. It's great that you guys are going up to the 12%. I know that the city staff asked you to refine this a little bit. We just mentioned, I guess one of the proposals was instead of going from 50 to 80% MI to kind of go a little bit deeper on the affordability. I definitely agree with that if that can be done financially on this project. But at the same time, I'm wondering, were there other critiques? Was that the only thing that you're looking at? Were there other things that you were thinking about? We just had a prior presentation that was done by students, and thinking about the low-income housing tax credit, the new market tax credit. There's a whole set of financing that you could go after. I don't know if you are, that could help bring in more equity to produce deeper affordability, or go with the affordability that you're talking about, but inject a bunch of equity into the project, which can increase your rate of return on everything. So I'm just wondering if what you've thought, again, the city staff has said think more deeply about affordability in this project, and I'm wondering how much you've thought about and what are the other things that you have in your bags of tricks that you might propose to either bring deeper affordability to the units that you've proposed, or maybe greater affordability. And one thing we haven't talked about, and I don't know if is on the table, is sometimes it's whether you're going to keep these units on site, which I think would be fantastic. But at the same time, you also could cut a check, which could help us produce maybe greater units elsewhere in the city. So again, just looking for your insights on the affordable housing proffer package for this project. Thank you.
No, thank you for those very thoughtful comments. And from the jump start on this project, there's been a focus on how do we get more affordability into a quote unquote market rate deal. So the focus from the get-go, I believe I started at about 10% affordability. We've worked our way up to 12% affordability, which is again double that of phase one. If the city, this is frankly the first public conversation I've had regarding do we split the tiers up. We are very open to that. We are welcome to have those conversations. I think one of the things that you should be aware of as well is that the affordability is not segmented from the market rate inside this building. They're mixed floor to floor. It's the same finishes, same access to amenities. It's simply a matter of the rent limits that we're working with the city. In fact, we've I believe across the street, we've already had 6 or 7 affordable units leased in just a couple of weeks. So we are very cognizant of creating that same experience. To your second point on tax credits, it was a few months ago, I participated with Councilmember Hardy and a few others on an affordability panel. I can't remember, I think it was the city's League of Voters that hosted the panel. And we had a really long and productive conversation about how the city can increase affordability. Mill Creek is not a quote unquote affordable developer utilizing tax credits. As I know you're very well aware, the economics of those transactions differ considerably from a typical market rate transaction, namely on the financing, but also then on how much you can pay for the land, in reality, right? So it's different market conditions. We do work with other affordable developers in partnership on projects, on larger projects where we can do multiple type of structures. This doesn't really lend itself to that. So there's nothing that we would change in our financing structure. This is the project that we try to propose. We're trying to put as much affordability into it. If the number of units is reduced and the tiers of AMI adjust, we certainly are open to those conversations. Clearly, there's an economic reality that we have to, support, which is, I think, what the prior presentation was talking about. Like there has to be a light at the end of the tunnel in order to move forward with it all. But to that point, with that and all of the benefits, we are open to conversation. And I apologize if there was more to your comment, but I'm happy to answer anything else on affordability.
No, that's fine. But I did have a question for the city staff. I know in one of the things that was provided to us was sort of the general proffer amount per unit for a number of developments that we've had in the city. And I'm just wondering, for this one in particular, the overall proffer number per unit is a little bit lower than I think the last deal, not Founders One, but the last one that we did in the city. And I'm just kind of wondering, why is that the case? And this is really for staff. They're the ones that are asking for these things. And I'm not asking about the split in terms of where these proffers go. I'm just looking at the total dollar amount per unit and this deal compared to prior deals. I can pull it up. I mean, it was sent to us if people don't understand what I'm referring to.
I'm happy to defer to staff, Jeff or Gary, if you want to.
Yeah, this is really a question for
pitch in. But I did have a comment on that because I've had conversations with staff. We had to summarize our things. Just to be candid, the Washington Broad Street did have some unique voluntary concessions that are very specific to that site alone, namely the rent subsidy for the Creative Cauldron, which was a significant amount. So if you're extracting kind of those very specific things, this compares extremely favorably to that Washington Broad. I mean, very, very similar type numbers. So it's really that one caveat that's the difference. But staff may have a additional input on that as well.
I guess I can chime in just very briefly on it. We had, I think what you're referring to is what we had in attachment number. What was it? 10 or 11, which 10, was 8, 11. Yeah, but yeah, it was a community benefits summary, and that was actually just created just recently to try and align this project with what had been offered in previous projects. And I guess I would say, really what we were trying to do with this was to put everything on even footing. But there are some sort of intangibles with this chart that I think need to be kind of kept in mind as we look at it. I know council called out inflation, which altered some numbers here and there as well. But I do think that there's also a large change in over the years in what the city's priorities were, especially as we look into commercial space and how much we're looking for in any given project. So I think that if you really just compare it to something that's a little bit more recent, like what we're working with the Broad and Washington project, that's why you find that per unit total to be roughly the same. Whereas like we talked about with Founders Row, being 10, starting that process about 10 years ago, there might have been different interests back then that made the per unit total that much different.
Yeah, I mean,
this is Jim Snyder. I think this is the Broad and Washington is still waiting to be approved by site plan by this commission, if I recall. So it's still a work in progress. The Whole Foods there generates, in the pro formas, I believe, a very significant amount of sales and revenue and nature of that particular business. And of course, we have a public parking garage and a purchase of city land. Every site has its own unique characteristics, but I think this is the second best in terms of numbers of all the projects in the city. 301 West Broad, I think, had 4% affordable housing. That's a third of what this is being proposed. So every site has its slight differences. I think one way to look at it is, how is the property performing now versus what could happen with it? And right now it's a big economic zero. Vacant buildings, no income, basically an abandoned site. And so part of it is what's there now versus what's there in the future. And that's another way to look at it. The other thing I would mention, I know the commission heard the zoning ordinance amendment that updated the criteria for special exceptions. and that has been talked about a lot here tonight, but that was modernized to reflect our small area plans, the wide variety of important issues in the city, from sustainability to housing, et cetera. And so using that new set of standards, we're looking at the overall economic contribution, plus are there parts of what the city's goals are for the city, whether it's affordable housing or sustainability or better sidewalks. What's that totality look like? So I think that was a very important policy update that the commission and the council considered and modernized a tool that, was very good, but hadn't been modernized in a long time. So those are some thoughts that I'd have on this.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump. Mr. Schneider, thank you for providing that context and for your kind of explanation. And I just wanted to say, you had a really good comment about looking at what's the performance or the economic return to the city on how the property is now versus how the property will be after this development. And that's kind of one way to look at, the sort of the negotiations on the proffers. I would just say that I look at it a little bit differently. I do that calculation that you just mentioned, but my calculation is what could the property be garnering an economic activity? Not what is it doing now, but what could it be with its current zoning? And then we are asked as the Planning Commission to change the zoning. So when we change the zoning, if we do, what's the added economic value there? Now, I know you said you don't own the property now, but at the same time, it's sort of, what will you get the property at? And our change that we might do and the city might do is kind of where does it go from one zoning kind of level to what's the property worth at a different zoning level? And that delta is what helps me as a planning commissioner, and I think others, determine then what's the proffers to ask, because that helps determine what the profitability of the land would be. And so anyway, so that changes. So anyway, I just use a different criteria, or I use additional criteria to try to understand what the overall proffer should be on any particular site. But you mentioned there's all these other factors. What do you get the land? What's construction cost? There's many different things. But it just seems that going from a commercial to a residential very much increases the potential profitability of that site.
And I would agree with that. One thing I would say is that prior to the consolidation or potential consolidation of the two properties, we were looking at people who wanted to reuse the existing building that the Rite Aid is in and re-tenant it. And the same with the carpet store. There was interest by 7-Eleven to put a corner store there, and some enthusiasm for that. So absent a consolidation, I think the likelihood would be reuse of existing buildings, or possibly another smaller scale retail development with traditional parking that could be more easily done, less costly to do. Something could be done by right. But at any rate, you never know how these things are going to turn out. But that was in fact the case at Founders One, where we had a drive-through bank proposed, and we made ordinance changes to make that more difficult, and the result was a different ending.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. And Mr. Schneider and everyone for that part of the discussion. I think Ms. Weiss, other than me, you're up.
Thank you. I want to, thank Mr. Muffler and the team for all of the changes since we last saw this project back in April. I think you've heard a lot of the comments, and I appreciate that. I also want to align myself with all of my planning commissioner colleagues' comments. There've been a lot of really astute ones made tonight, and with the recommendations that staff made in the city council memo. I also want to thank staff. I thought the city council memo was very helpful in terms of laying out the comments and staff and the project responses to it. So thanks to staff for that. There's just two comments I wanted to zero in on from the staff comments in particular. One is because my colleagues have covered so many other valuable things already. One is tree cover. I see that I believe that the tree canopy coverage is only going to be 11%, 11.5%. And I want to note that in the small area plan covering this area, there is, a strategy to treat West Broad Street to take advantage of the opportunity to use it as a public open space and as public green space. And I'm not sure that's happening. I think the city arborist made a very good comment that the corner in particular could be a pretty stark corner. I see that there's a park there. I see that there's more greenery, but can we do more? And I just want to connect to the experience that a pedestrian or bicyclist, scooterist would have walking on Broad Street. As Ms. Comont noted, speeds are horrifying there. And I don't know if we're doing enough to provide a buffer for pedestrians. So, trees will provide that buffer. The temperature's only getting hotter. Trees are going to help with that. We're going to get more precipitation over the lifetime of this project. Trees will help with that. So I wanted to ask what you can do to increase the tree canopy coverage around the building. I wanted to pick up on the arborist and environmental program coordinator's comments on using green infrastructure and the lawns or the green spaces in front of on Ellison. Can we do something besides grass that maybe will have more of a stormwater benefit as well? And then the last piece I just wanted to touch on and just understand more is, how are you engaging with the Ellison Street neighbors? Because this will be a very significant impact on their lives.
Yes, thank you for that feedback. What I can tell you right now is, we will go back with our landscape engineers and evaluate how to increase tree canopy coverage where there is ability to add along Southwest and around the project in general. We are meeting, the streetscape standards, so there will be trees. And if you've walked by Founders Row 1 on the newly opened sidewalk, you can see just how large those sidewalks are with the tree pits and the bike racks and the benches. So there is a lot more width for pedestrian safety, but your point still stands. Where we can try to increase trees, that's one thing we did do at the corner of Ellison and West. Frankly, that was that was an actual gathering space with a lot of hard seating. It was wide open right there. And one of the comments we got is, anywhere you can put tree coverage, let's put it. So we were able to get 2 more trees into that corner of West and Ellison. So that was one big change. But you have my commitment that we'll go back and look at that along with other green infrastructure. In terms of engaging with neighbors, frankly, this is the start of that process. We did have a neighbor walking tour strictly for that Ellison-Patterson Street neighborhood about a month and a half ago. That informed, frankly, many of the comments that you can see on the transportation and traffic area. That's where the median break on West Broad came from. So we will have another walking tour and neighbor tour, but it's my commitment to them, which frankly I've not done yet. I'll be very candid if they're listening. I've not reached out to them to schedule regular meetings. I've been waiting for kind of a more formalized schedule for this process, but that is my intent, is to hold regular meetings with the neighbors to at least be as transparent as I possibly can be. I can't promise that I'll be able to cure all of their concerns, but we certainly want to work with them as we have with the neighbors on phase 1.
Just before, I don't want to skip you. I know you had mic problems. Have you been able to sort that out? I see you're still here. Can't hear. All right, well. Unfortunately, Ms. Teets, we still can't hear you. Probably another good reason why we need to get back in person when we can safely do that, because then we won't have to deal with such problems. Well, if you do, or if you're somehow able to get back in before the meeting's over, by all means, you'll be able to say whatever you need to say. Before I throw it over to some other guests we have here from the other boards and commissions, I mean, just for me, I mean, big picture, I do think the project has improved since we've seen it in the spring. I think we've hit on a lot of the high level stuff. Maybe I'll bring it down. I'm not an immediate neighbor, but I'm close enough. Maybe I'll bring it down to some of the, neighbor issues. I know you touched on some of that, but, traffic and stormwater, kind of the bread and butter of any land use approval case when it really comes down to it, and a lot of these things. I mean, first of all, I completely agree, with the comment Mr. Stevens made, the somewhat, witty comment that, a level of service A intersection is not, typically the, necessarily the best environment from a pedestrian and a city standpoint. I will say, that shouldn't preclude fixing substandard and conditions from an engineering perspective. And I do think the alignment of South and Northwest Street being as they are, which precludes both phases from running at the same time, is one of the major, choke points, on all along Broad Street, especially on this west end. And unlike other intersections, like Oak or Lee, just where they're so offset that solution, it starts to become very difficult. Here, they're not that far off. They're off just enough that it makes it dangerous to allow it, which is why it functions the way it does. But I really do think that's something. You mentioned that, you alluded to that, but I really think that's something that needs to be looked at to improve flow in that area. Not necessarily. I agree. We shouldn't be looking at widening the intersection or adding lanes, but I think I brought this up on way back when on Founders Row 1, when I was just a neighbor on the other side. I think I brought this up at the time and was told a lot of reasons why it couldn't happen. But now, now you're going to be controlling potentially both, two corners of the 4. And I know, you're looking at that, but I would strongly encourage you to look at that. I know there's a traffic study that I don't think the Planning Commission got a copy of, the Wells study. Maybe we did, I just missed it, but it wasn't up on our agenda for this. And I know typically maybe we don't always get that unless we ask for it, but I'd ask staff to, let us take a look at the traffic analysis. So, for those of us who care to dig into that, we can see that. And so the other thing I would say is, stormwater. I noticed there's a note on there that talking about, well, everything will be sized and figured out at site plan. And I know the site is largely impervious today, and there's an existing basin, but I will say that it's a low point. I've seen that existing basin overflow, and from a neighbor perspective, I think again, we have our stormwater task force in the city that has been pushing for these redevelopment projects to go above and beyond what the minimum requirement would be for a by right development as far as meeting your detention and quality requirements. And I would encourage you to look at doing that here. To try to alleviate, again, what I believe is, which I know is a bit of a problem area as a low point. So, I would encourage you to, if you can commit to something here and not just have a note that says I'm leaving it to site plan. I think that level of detail, as far at least conceptually, what you're looking at for detention, I think is important at this phase. I think, architecture, I think some people alluded to that. I think it's important, that first of all, it's an improvement. Your current renderings are an improvement. And I know the ARB will again get into that in more detail. But I think it's important that, especially controlling 2 sites, I don't think we would want to see, a twin or a clone of Founders Row 1. I think it's important to have a variety, to have, I think Mr. Stevens or someone mentioned that, we're starting to see, and some of that's just the nature of what's in vogue at certain times when buildings go up. But, I don't think we want to see, buildings looking very similar. To have some more interest in different styles, I think is important. And I'd encourage you to continue to refine that. I think reducing the height, stepping back on the Ellison side is a positive, but, again, perhaps there are other things that could be done to help, again, make it more interesting and not, mimic what's across the street, if at all possible. Not that I don't like what's across the street, but, I think, again, having interest and variety is important as well. I think those are my main comments at this point. I know, I listened very intently to the council discussion last week and their concerns about, the status of the commercial at Founders Row 1. I would say I share that. I think we on the Planning Commission are tasked with, looking and evaluating your project here, but it's definitely not lost on me. The importance of what happens, there. And, with that said, I would align myself with what I believe it was Councilmember Hardy said, that, residential is not a bad word. I'm not opposed to, having a project with significant residential if it helps to, again, improve the retail landscape and build in successful retail. So, with that said, I think that to the extent you can continue to keep us in the loop on that throughout this process, as far as what goes on at Founders Row 1, it will, I believe, help, because you're building in with this project, perhaps, people who can walk and support those businesses. And it helps to justify, a slightly more residential project here, as opposed to, what maybe some other folks might want to see. I think the residential is important, but, it needs to fit into, I think, that bigger picture. So that's kind of my take at this point.
Mr. Krasner, if I may, I had actually one question for you regarding the traffic, and there is a traffic study that was done with our initial submission materials. But if I can just retreat to what you initially said about, as I'm a little bit confused, the signalization at Broad Street, with the proposal in our traffic plan was to ensure that there is concurrent left turn phasing, which is currently not allowed, which is why each side backs up. Were you saying you supported that, or you didn't support that, or was there a different? I apologize, I got a little bit confused.
No, I support that. I mean, I would like to see, I look at the study and see how it's being shown. Yeah, obviously, yeah. And if I missed that from an earlier, it wasn't part of our package for this time.
No worries.
It was in the study back in the spring, and I just not remembering that. And yeah, I mean, the left turn phasing at a minimum is important, but even if it's possible for the straight, north-south phasing, I think that would help. I mean, that's part of the reason why Broad Street, the red time that's required on Broad to allow, each phase to go separately. So I'll have to look again. Forgive me if I'm missing.
No worries. There's a lot of information in this presentation. There was a lot of information in that report. And then just one other point that I did want to make on the stormwater is we have sized so our commitment in the VCs is a 20% reduction over the 10-year storm runoff rate, which I believe is kind of what's been achieved in the last few VCs, plus a commitment to the stormwater fund, and that's through detention and bioretention. And that is not something that we have simply said defer to site plan, because the reality is that's a big vault that needs to go in. So we've sized that, and that's our commitment. If there's other topics to that, I'm happy to discuss, but I do want to put that on the record.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay. Let's see, we have a few other folks. Mr. Howard, your hand's up again. Is that left over from before, or did you have something else you wanted to add before I throw it over to some other folks?
No, I just left that up. I don't have any other comments.
All right.
I'll take it down. Sorry about that.
Yeah, if we were in a meeting, I think I would have noticed if your hand was that tired and your arm was up for 20 minutes. But all right, I think Mr. Way, your hand was up before Mr. Agent. So I'll throw it over to you, Mr. Way, if you're still with us here. I appreciate your patience.
I am. No, thank you. No, it's been an excellent conversation. And thank you, Mr. Krasner. And Mr. Muffler, thanks very much for your presentation. Like you said, very thorough, very concise, and we appreciate it. Speaking on behalf of the AAB, definitely appreciate the overall changes from the first time around to what we're looking at now. As Mr. Stevens said, we're looking forward to working with you on just the overall architecture and just providing our feedback when it comes before us. But just real quick now, definitely, I would say, echoing some of the other comments, look carefully just at the corner of West and Broad. It's a very prominent corridor for this town. A lot of people coming and going through there. And so it's something that you should look at pretty carefully. And yeah, don't necessarily mimic what's across the street, but talk to it, that kind of thing, or catty corner, I should say. Also, don't forget to think about the opposite corner. What's going to happen on Ellison all the way in, adjacent to the other commercial property back there. Just think about that, because you'll have a lot of people coming from the residential area back there, and how that talks to the property next door and what that property could eventually be, because who knows if that's going to stay the way it is. Definitely appreciate more lawn versus hardscape on that Ellison side. That's great. I also think, one thing that we've seen recurring a lot in town with a lot of the development and we're learning from is when in Founders Plaza, the current plan has a lot of built-in furniture and elements in there. One thing you might want to look at is allowing a little bit more flexibility in there, so not as much built in, so that retail, whoever's there, can do things with the space. You see that out in front of what's now Solus. That space isn't necessarily as flexible as it could be for either music or arts and crafts kind of stuff, because it's got so much built-in, so many built-in elements. And so you might want to look at, you think of like Brant Park in New York City or something where there are just chairs out and they can be moved around or taken away for other uses. So just something to think of there. I think that one of the more, it doesn't have to do with the overall design or the architecture, but more in the planning process. And this is as much for, I think, the Planning Commission and City Council as it is for the applicant. At Founders Row 1, we're seeing what we're seeing now, and taking into appreciation that how the impacts of COVID and the pandemic on development and commercial tenants and things like that. But what we're seeing now is the plywood or the vinyl wrapped plywood at many of those storefronts there. And I think that is because the burden the burden of storefront development is on the tenants, right? As opposed to you, the applicant, the developer. And so what we're looking at with the reduced or the longer term of vacancy for those properties is the town, the people going by, they're for a longer time looking at wrapped plywood. And I know that, again, lots of circumstances are in play there, but I think that the city, again, council or the planning commission or both should look at making a requirement of acceptance or condition of approval, a completed building envelope. So that we don't necessarily have to look at that for any extended period of time, because I don't think it does you guys any favors, and it certainly doesn't do the town any favors. So we might want to look at doing, at making sure that we acknowledge the fact that there might be spaces at the bottom of this building that aren't occupied right away, and what will they look like until they are. So with that, I definitely appreciate everything you've done. And again, looking forward to seeing you back in front of our particular board and getting this moving along. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Jim. No, I appreciate all that feedback. And with regards to the plywood, you hit the nail on the head there. It does me no good as well, right? As the owner, as someone that's trying to market that property, we are going to have that covered with something nice, all of it with something nice, so that it's more attractive. The reality is there's a balance between having a storefront that's put in at completion, and then the tenant comes and puts, kind of a banner or whatever, their signage on it, which becomes fairly homogenous, especially for that long of storefront. The goal here was to create an experience, simply put, like what you see at Mosaic, where there is a variety of storefronts and finishes on that ground floor. If you may recall, when Mosaic was built, that was all plywood as well for this exact reason. So it's a healthy balance, right, between having this homogeneous storefront versus something much more creative. But I totally understand what you're saying. Our goal for phase 1 is to get that covered as soon as possible. I hope by the end of the month.
Okay, understood. Thanks.
Okay, I think Mr. Agent, you're up.
All right, thank you. I'm with the Committee on Transportation, and there's a bunch of stuff I want to address here. I do like the changes that have been made along West and Ellison. I think there's some really good stuff going on there. The Broad is a completely different story, and I'm going to save that for last because there are quite a few issues. One of the things that I have not seen a lot of information on is bicycles and pedestrians. They're kind of referenced in a vague way, but there's really not a whole lot of detail, especially beyond the property. So we really need to take a look at where are the bicycles and pedestrians going to be coming from. We need to understand the routes that they would take across the property, from the property and across the property to the WNOD trail without crossing Broad. Bicycles and pedestrians should not be required to cross Broad to get to WNOD. People coming up Ellison west of Broad, or west of West or south of West, need to be able to get through to the WNOD. How will they do that? And I think the stuff you're doing behind along Ellison may be very conducive. It's just the information is not there. Same thing with the bicycle parking. There's a large number of bicycle parkings. It says nothing about where they are and how close they are to where they need to be. There's obviously bicycle parking for the residential. That's going to be inside somewhere, secure, all of that. But what about the transient parking for people coming in? So coming to visit the office, the retail, there seems to be, I have not seen any information about where that parking will be. And we really do need to see this stuff. I think when you come to the CACT, I would recommend you address these, specifically call out where the bicycle parking will be, what are the bicycle and pedestrian routes, not only to the WNOD and down Ellison south of West Street, but also to West End Park. It's one of the hidden gems around here. And if you're bringing residential into this location, the nearby park is West End. There's also another park easily available going down Ellison south of West. So both of those are going to become transit. And the other connection that we really need to understand is the connection for pedestrians between Founders Row 2 and Founders Row 1. West and Broad, we've talked about it extensively. We've talked about it extensively about bicycle or about cars, and there's been a lot of discussion about cars. Between the two of those, we need to discuss pedestrians. We need to talk about bicycles and tree cover so that things are good. We need to understand those pieces of it. Let's see. So now let's talk about Broad. Broad has significant issues, starting with the sidewalk. You mentioned the sidewalk along Founders Row 1 on Broad, how wide it was. It's the minimum for this type of building. I wouldn't promote it as being broad, as being wide. It is the minimum width adjacent to the maximum height of the building. And regardless of the plywood, it is a slab. It is a giant slab on Broad. This building for Founders Row 2 is exactly the same thing. Minimum width sidewalk, minimum required setback, and maximum height. You're requesting between 135% and 160% of code exception to go there, and that's all going to be right along Broad with a minimum setback. The other problems with the sidewalk there is you're proposing cafe seating on the sidewalk. So you're encroaching on the 20 feet. You're going to need at least say 6 feet for that minimum. You're bringing in tree planters. So you're talking about 4 feet, even more for that. It's probably more than that. I'm concerned that the remaining space may not even meet ADA requirements. And if they do, it'll be towards the minimum. Again, minimum. If there's going to be cafe seating and so forth, that should not encroach on the 20-foot setback so that we can have properly sized sidewalks. The other issue is the left turn out. That's not going to work. I don't care what the traffic studies say. If you go to the West End Plaza and try to make a left turn out of West End Plaza, it can take you a considerable amount of time. It will back up even in there, to the point where when I'm in there, I will go out the other exit to avoid somebody blocking the exit, trying to make a left. And that already has a buffer zone with a turn lane. The center buffer piece that you're proposing, I'm concerned that that's going to encroach on the left turn lane into the West Falls Plaza. And that's the way that comes through. Second problem on Broad is you're proposing over 50% food and restaurants in the retail along Broad. And I see no provision for delivery drivers to come in and pick stuff up. Grubhub, Uber, all of these. It's also true for the residential. This is the reality we live in now. This is what life is. If you go look at Broad near Hunan Cafe, that has parking right next door, right behind it, and those drivers are still parking on Broad, blocking a travel lane. And that's what's going to happen here as well. So we need to have provision so that that does not happen. We can't be having them block Broad, especially since the lane that they would be blocking is the lane proposed for the bus rapid transit. By the time this is built, if this goes forward and bus rapid transit goes forward, I suspect the bus rapid transit will precede this project. So you're looking at some changes to Broad where that curb lane gets taken over or has new assignments made. It's still a work in progress exactly what will happen. Altogether, this is a lot of things along Broad that are going to cause massive issues. And then you have bike parking that, if it's for the retail, it needs to be right in front of the stores on Broad. So that's one more thing in the middle of it. And all of the things that need to go in, that we're looking to go in there, are good. There's just not enough room for it. And one last thing, I applaud the 50% conduits for EVs. I think it's the highest I've heard, and I think it's great. However, we're talking about a time frame where GM is talking about 30 new EVs by 2025. Ford is talking 40 to 50% of all their sales will be electric vehicles by 2030. I think we all know this will not be built and open before 2025. It'll be there by 2030, I hope. I think we are at a point now where any new project that's proposed should have 100% conduits. Doesn't need to have the chargers, doesn't need to have the electric actually installed, but the pipes should be run, because it's going to get to that point and you're not going to know where those cars are going to park. There's no longer going to be designated electric parking. People are they're just going to want to park there. So I would appreciate if that then moved forward. And one last thing around the traffic survey, I would like to see the accuracy evaluated of the traffic survey for Founders Row 1. Now that it's in place, and although we don't have the actual traffic going into it yet, we don't have that retail traffic, the residential traffic is still not at its full amount. It's it'll grow, but the through traffic and other pieces of it are in place, and I think we need to take a look at how that traffic survey, how accurate it was, and compare it to this one. I see a lot of traffic issues here. That was it.
Well, thank you. That's, truly, thank you for that feedback. I mean, from the jump, the number one item here has been traffic. So that feedback's invaluable to us. We sincerely look forward to meeting with CACT, and you've given me quite the homework here. My traffic engineer is actually in attendance. He and I have quite the homework to do so we can be prepared to come and speak with you. But this is great feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, and please bring a map showing the pedestrian, bicycle routes in and out and to destinations, because I think we just haven't seen the details.
Yep, we'll have a handful of exhibits. This is very helpful.
Okay, well, again, I'm sure we could continue to chat about this late into the evening and beyond. It's already late in the evening. So I think at this point, unless anyone else from the commission had anything else they wanted to add on this, I do see Mr. Snyder's hand is up. He's not on the commission, but I guess we'll let him talk.
Yes, I thought that those were very interesting points made by the member from CACT. And I think one of the things that does get lost in the city is we tend to talk traffic as though it's all cars. And there are, just for information purposes, levels of service for pedestrian flow and standards, et cetera. We haven't called those out, but all around this site, most of the pedestrian amenities are probably level of service F or E. And so we have to look at those improvements and what's the catchment area within a 10-minute walk, how many people can walk to these places, because that's one of the goals here is to have a better modal split and have things in places for people to go and walk and get their neighborhood needs done. Some of this was brought out in the West Broad small area plan, where it showed how many people are within close proximity to Broad Street, but how few everyday commercial facilities were actually available. The other thing we've been trying to do, as we can with every project, is put some of these main streets on a road diet so that we have no greater than 11-foot lanes on Broad Street. And so we have been able to move the curb out in many instances to get that 11-foot lane width down so that you don't have an undue crossing distance from one side of a street to another. That's what's killing Fairfax County, for example, these ultra wide streets that nobody wants to cross, and they become retail deserts and pedestrian deserts. So I appreciate the comments were made by the member from CACT. I thought those were very helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Mr. Puentes.
Thank you. Just very quickly, the proposed left turn lane and that cutout that would happen there, is that part of the VCs? And if not, who would pay for that project?
It's not part of the VCs, but I mean, this is a technical question made for staff. My understanding is that would be a part of the site plan. So that, frankly, commission would evaluate that, and if it's on our site plan, we're paying for it.
One thing staff asked for was additional money. I think $100,000 is the preliminary number in the VCs for additional pedestrian improvements that will help connect this site with others. And I think, you know, how this fits in with other sites nearby, how people flow through it, is an important component of any project. And so the staff had asked for a contribution to help be able to extend the connections of a site like this to its neighbors. Anyway, I thought those were helpful points made by the representative from CACT. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Puentes, that $100,000 is above and beyond anything that's illustrated in the site plan. It's essentially meant to be a catch-all for things that we can't possibly know or understand at this point.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, again, like I said, I think, you know, this has been I hope this has been helpful. It's been a good kind of starting point. You know, I do see staff's projected timeline, which may or may not prove to be an aggressive timeline. You know, as far as getting to a vote, you know, in November. But for now, I suppose you'll go out to some of the boards and commissions, and you know, we'll see how things progress, and you know, as this continues. But I suppose, at least officially, that's the next time we're scheduled to take this up. And I guess in the meantime, commissioners, you know, for more information, we know where to find Mr. Muffler and team and city staff if there are other questions or concerns that come up in the meantime. And we do look forward to seeing this progress and evolve. You know, it's already started that process. I do think the community input side of it is going to be key. I know you're just about to hopefully kick that off in a more formal way. And I think that will prove to be important, as it is on all sites, but anywhere where we have, single family detached, across from, these larger projects, that transition and, both literally and how you design the building, but also the outreach you do and working with, with the neighbors is so important on these, which I know you're well aware of. So, I guess with that, we'll wrap this up. And for the commission, we still have a few more items to dispense with before we're done for the evening. We are going back out of our work session back to action items, which all it is our minutes from our last meeting, which was way back on September 1st. Seems like a long time ago. Folks have any comments or edits or questions? Have at it. If not, I'll look for a motion on the September 1st minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes of September 1st, 2021.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? And if not, a roll call vote, please.
All right, Mr. Krasner,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Teets, Mr. Puentes,
Yes.
Ms. Weiss,
Yes.
Ms. Colmont,
Yes.
Mr. Hyra.
Yes.
Okay, great. Information items, any so brief planning commissioners reports for the last few weeks? Anyone would like to share? Let's see. Mr. Puentes, your hand is up, but I think that might be left over from before. Unless you have
Apologies.
no problem. Okay, not hearing any planning commissioners reports, and that's not always a bad thing considering the late hour. Director's report, Mr. Fuller. I see you do have a brief director's report. Why don't you go ahead?
Yes, I'll just highlight the items. The planning and zoning quarterly report for July and through September. That was one of 3 items we provided to you, and it highlights the West Falls Church Economic Development Project that was approved by council on August 9th, and that includes the special exception entitlement amendment and the special exception site plan for phase 1. Also noted the Founders Row mural was completed in August, and there some information on that as well. The East End Small Area Plan, there was a stakeholder meeting that took place on September 15th, and this was a dynamic type workshop with participants from Arlington, Fairfax counties, Capital Commercial Properties, and the Coalition for Smarter Growth. Also, just a couple personnel updates. We had some promotion of 2 team members in CPADs. One was Emily Bazemore and then Val Weiner. Emily has been promoted to senior planner and Val to senior planner deputy economic development chief. So congratulations to them on those promotions. We wanted to share that with you. In terms of other items, there was an article planning for vibrant retail. It was provided in a local chapter of the American Planning Association in terms of a webinar on July 16th. So we provided some highlights and some information on that. It talked about the need for retail clustering and urban design, pedestrian connections, and so forth. So, if you have a moment, take time and check out that webinar. Lastly, the Amazon Reach 3 to 5 year grant application program. The city is involved in that, and it's established a affordable housing acquisition strike fund to purchase any limited remaining market affordable multifamily rental units. And basically, we have 2 of these types in the community, Columbia West and Virginia Village, and EDA has been active in Virginia Village lately, and the targeted funds are concentrating on that at this point. So anyway, we just wanted to provide that information to you and those highlights. For your next planning commission meeting on October 20th, we have a recommendation on naming the property yard after Robert Golf. We have the Broad in Washington site plan. That's their second submission. And there'll be a work session. And then we have our CIP kickoff. The season has started on that. So any questions on any of those items or other for the planning department? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. I'll also just add, I think we got copied on, Ms. Bazemore sent out that there's in the world of ribbon cuttings, for those who like to attend ribbon cuttings, or the trails ribbon cutting, I think is tomorrow. The WNOD dualized trail ribbon cutting is tomorrow at 10:30 at I think at Oak Street. If people are interested in checking out a ribbon cutting, which actually it's been great to see that take shape over the last few months. Really it's it makes a huge difference. I mean, just from safety and usability of the trail, and so it's exciting to see that come through. And I know the intersection project that the city is doing, is going to kick off hopefully before too long. So yeah, good things. Other than that, let's see. Last thing we were copied on for correspondence. We were copied on a letter from Vipus on something related on the need for urban forester and some other issues. Folks can read that. We were copied on that. It was mostly directed to council, but so with that, unless there's any other topics, issues, concerns folks want to bring up, like I said at the very, very beginning, I'm constantly in touch with Paul on the issue of transitioning back to in-person meetings when it's feasible. The council did hold an in-person meeting, I believe, for the first time in September. And Paul indicated it, and you can watch it online. I mean, it went mostly well. There were some hiccups, some technology hiccups. So obviously we want, it'd be great if council can sort of figure out the bugs, as far as that, because it was a hybrid format where staff is remote and other folks are remote. The council members were all there and other folks were there, but the goal would be to transition back to that, in a reasonable time frame. So stay tuned, and I'm open to any input, on that as that becomes more of a reality for us. But folks have concerns, but that certainly would be the goal, to get back to some semblance of normal and holding meetings in person and allowing the public to testify in person, etc. So stay tuned. As soon as I have more information on anything like that, I will certainly share it with everybody. And with that, if there's nothing else, I'll call the October 6th, 2021 meeting of the Planning Commission adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great meeting. Thanks.